On October 19th, 1941, Great Britain was at war with Nazi Germany. In a little less than 2 months, the United States would be attacked at Pearl Harbor, bringing us into World War II as well. The Prime Minister of England, Winston Churchill, was invited on this date to address the students and faculty of the Harrow School. The Harrow School is a public boarding school for boys in London, founded in 1572. Yes, 1572. The Harrow School is older than your school and my school. Churchill, as a boy, had attended Harrow School, and so did 6 other little boys who grew up to be prime ministers in England, various Nobel Prize winners, a lot of famous people went to this school. In his speech that day, Churchill talked about the war, and he talked about English participation in it. And one of the things he said was this: "In these months in England, we have learned this: never give in, never give in, never, 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 never. In nothing great or small, in large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to the apparent overwhelming might of the enemy." This is what Luke tells us about this strange and funny parable this morning. He tells us it's about never giving up. He says it is about the need to pray and to not lose heart. Remember, this is a parable. It's a teaching tool. My favorite definition of a parable, I've shared this with you before, I share it with you now. A parable is a story that never happened and always is. That's what a parable is. Jesus' parables sometimes are theaters of the absurd, and this one is exactly that. This parable involves, we're told, a judge and a widow. During Jesus' days, judges held immense social status, and their duty was to maintain harmonious relations and adjudicate disputes between Israelite citizens. I love the opportunity to use the word adjudicate. Widows were obviously deprived of the support of a husband, and in that society, get this, they could not legally inherit their husband's estate. That estate was passed on to the deceased man's sons or brothers. The widows had no standing. So disputes involving widows and orphans coming before judges were very common. Luke, who also, of course, wrote Acts, the first history of the early church, Luke talks a lot about the plights of widows. And he tells us that the early church took an aggressive stance in support of the needs of widows. They're mentioned constantly, especially in Acts. The early church was focused on the needs of widows. So Jesus tells his disciples, and he tells us this morning, that this parable is about never, never, never giving up. About never, never, never stop praying. About never, never, never stop praying about wherever there is injustice that needs justice. This parable is really funny. It's weird. This judge is a farce. We are told he did not fear God. Now what this means, essentially in the scriptures, is that it means he had no use for God. He had no respect, didn't care about God. We're told that. And we are also told that he does not respect other people. This judge is completely unfit for his position. But what does he have? Can you imagine an official having power who's completely unfit for the job? Can you imagine such a thing?
Yes!
So what does this judge have? He has power. And he especially has power over people like widows who had little or no power. And we find out that she has the one thing the parable wants to teach us. She has persistence. Persistence is her only recourse. The unjust judge from whom one could hardly expect justice. That's what we're supposed to. If we're hearing this parable for the first time, we're told this guy has no use for God. He has no use for people. This guy is incapable of doing justice. So what's going to happen? Well, he ends up doing the right thing, if only to keep from being badgered by the persistent widow. Jesus told them this parable is about their need to pray and don't lose heart. Okay, back to Psalm 121. What a joy it is to hear Psalm 121 today and not be at a funeral. I heard it at my mom's funeral. I heard it at my dad's funeral. I heard it at my favorite high school English teacher's funeral. I officiated all those funerals. I heard it at many of my friends and family members over the years, Psalm 121, at their funerals, which is wonderful, which is also incredibly ironic because it is a song about living. It's a song that can be our prayer today, and it can help us not lose heart. Psalm 121 is a psalm about life being a journey. There will be mountaintop joys. There will be valleys of despair. Some days we will dance on our journey, and some days we will fall. Some days the sun will beat hot upon us, and some nights the moon will wash us with grace. And on every day, God is. That's my favorite name for God. It's also my favorite definition of the concept of God. My favorite definition of God is Period. God is always calling. One of the things I didn't tell the young people, and I'll say it now, I once rode on an airplane. I was traveling by myself, and I got on the plane at Midway Airport in Chicago, and we flew to San Francisco. It's a good 3.5, 4-hour flight. It was a full flight. I sat in the window, and two people, I won't tell you their gender because it doesn't matter. Two people sat in the middle and on the aisle, 4-hour flight. They talked the entire flight. This is what God is like. God is always after us. I lift up mine eyes to the hills. From whence cometh my help? That's what the King James says. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. God will not let your foot slip. God who watches you will not slumber. God watches over Israel. God will not slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. God will watch over your life. The Lord will watch your coming and your going now and forevermore. Never, never, never stop praying. I've shared with you before that I've long operated on the assumption that there are basically two kinds of prayer: closed-eyed prayer and open-eyed prayer. And today I offer a third that I like even better as a result of studying this parable. More on that in a minute. Some people I know and some ministers I know are very much into closed-eyed prayer. Closed-eyed prayer. Great. And some of them are even pretty good at it. But, and I am not proud of this, but here it is. I was once part of a clergy group in Akron. There were about 20 of us that would get together occasionally. It was loosely organized. And one of the ministers, really wonderful guy, when it was his turn to open us up with a prayer, I went, oh no. He mentioned everybody on earth in his prayers. I'm not proud of this. Closed-eyed prayers. And then there is, God rest his soul, George Havelka. I've shared this with you before, and I'm going to share it with you again. George Havelka, God rest his soul, who was part of the men's Bible study group that I was in almost 40 years ago. And these guys would take turns opening up the Bible study with prayer. And George Havelka's, it was his turn to pray. He prayed a 10-word prayer. I counted them yesterday on my fingers. And I still remember it. It was 40 years ago. His eyes wide open. It was his turn we were opening up the Bible study. His eyes were wide open. There was a smile on his face. And he said this: God, we ain't much, but we're all you've got. Amen. It's the best prayer ever. Open-eyed. And I will leave you with this, my third way of looking at prayer today. And my dad, on this day when we're going to go down and share a meal together, and we're celebrating my 38th year as an ordained pastor. My third way of looking at prayer is I've learned it from my dad and from this parable. My dad was so proud. I've never known a man who was more proud to be a Presbyterian minister. He was so proud to be a Presbyterian minister. He would, in Marysville, he would talk about the other ministers in town when he was at home, just with us. He'd be like, oh, geez, those Methodists. You know what Methodists are? They're Baptists who can read. He would talk about them. He was so proud to be a Presbyterian. He was the first one there on Sunday mornings. 2 services. The first one was at 8:30. He was the first one there between 7 and 7:30. The second service was over, and then there was Sunday school. And he was the last one to leave, check the doors. First one there, last one to leave, every Sunday for 35 years. And what part of that don't you get? And every Sunday, he'd wear his clerical collar and go to the Memorial Hospital, the Union County Hospital. And he'd visit members of his church and others that weren't even members. This is what you do. What part of that don't you get? He was so proud. Every time I show up at a church without a tie on, my dad spins in his grave. Saying, what is wrong with you? He used to say, where's your tie? And I know that you know people like this as well. Never, never, my dad never, never, never stop being who he was in the name of Christ. And here's the definition is your prayer. Isn't that great? You don't have to say anything. Just live. Your life is your prayer. Our lives together are our collective prayers. And we will never, never, never stop. Amen?
Amen.
I invite you, as you're willing and able, to stand the hymn of Worship the King, number 2 in the red hymnal.